Tottenham are safe. Spurs stay up. Oh, Reed! Where on earth did he find that one from?
Gyökeres!
Forward through for Krupi. Chance here! Salah for Liverpool. And there finally is the goal. Arsenal have won this game. Gabriel's header.
In 2026, the champions are the Arsenal.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, EPL Index proudly brings to you the best prediction podcast in the world, A Tad Predictable. Your host, Tadiwa Chanakira.
For Liverpool. And there finally is the goal. Arsenal have won this game. Gabriel's header.
In 2026, the champions are the Arsenal.
In 2026, the champions were indeed Arsenal. That was the 2025-2026 Premier League season. But of course, the Premier League returns. Welcome to another episode of A Tad Predictable, episode 229, the second episode that we have moved from audio only after 227 episodes, which is crazy to me. But we're now here on YouTube, and we've got an absolute stunning weekend coming up because, as was mentioned in the intro, Arsenal did win the league title in 2025-2026, but we are on the dawn of a new era. We are on the dawn of a new Premier League season. Someone else, or maybe even Arsenal, if they go back to back, right, will have their name etched on that Premier League title, will have those ribbons with their colors, their club colors on the Premier League title. And before we jump any further, obviously you can see at the bottom of the screen there, please do like and subscribe to this podcast. Like and subscribe any of the podcasts on EPL Index Network. Make sure you smash that bell so that you can get notifications and never miss any of the shows when we do go live. And we do thank each and every one of you that are joining us live. For those that are listening later, we appreciate you as well as our audio listeners. I will never, ever forget you guys. I love you guys so much. You've done so much to support this podcast. And as we transition, we're not leaving you guys behind. We're just bringing you along on this new journey that is YouTube. But let's get into it then. As I mentioned, the Premier League returns officially tonight. Arsenal will be entertaining, obviously, newcomers Coventry, and we'll get into that. But once again, the great English stage prepares itself for drama. This is going to be a curtain raiser of a weekend for a season that's going to rebirth new stories, new patterns of play, a whole bunch of new managers that some people might not have heard of. And it's a season where obviously champions will be looking to defend. We've got giants in the Premier League who maybe we're not as sure about, and we'll see whether or not they can rise from the ashes. Some of them did well last season. Some of them are hoping to do well this season. Arsenal stand at the summit. They are the reigning champions. You have to acknowledge that. You have to respect that. They will be obviously bullish about their chances this season. We know how strong they were last season and how strong they're hoping to be this season. And then you've got the challengers, a lot of whom have new managers. So that's where probably the advantage for Arsenal comes in. And we're going to dive into each and every one of the fixtures. We'll give a prediction at the end of our little previews of each of the fixtures. And then we will send all of you on your way, getting ready and excited, gearing up for tonight's game to kick off the season. I do also want to mention on A Tad Predictable, for the month of August, we are running a competition. And in terms of how you guys can get involved, or if you want to partake in the competition, it is a gift card competition. So for the month of August, we are going to be giving away a £20 Amazon gift voucher at the end of August, and getting your name on that wheel that we're going to be spinning is pretty easy. If you join us live for any of the A Tad Predictable podcasts in August, if you jump into the live chat and you hit the like button, you will automatically be added onto the wheel. And for those of you that are not able to watch the show live, all you have to do is jump onto any of the recorded A Tad Predictable episodes on YouTube, like any of those videos, and leave a comment. Any of the videos of in August, like them, leave a comment, and you'll be added to the wheel as well. We'll be spinning that wheel live on our Monday, the 31st of August show, and we will be picking our winner then. So do get involved, support the show, and I do wish you luck. Hopefully you are going to be the winner for that one. But yeah, now that we got the competition out of the way, I want to get stuck into the Premier League season. I really, really am excited, as you guys can tell, about this season, because what we did in the summer is, as is tradition on this podcast, is we usually take a bit of a break. I know there's World Cup and other people are, talking about the World Cup, and it gives us a chance. It gives the team, the staff a chance just to refresh, watch football as fans, not as analysts or as someone that has to prepare for a podcast. Get to watch, summer games as fans. But as soon as the World Cup finished, we kind of got back into it, and it's been really fun. And now that we've gotten that rest, we're raring to go. So without further ado, I do want to mention that first game that we're going to be discussing, and it is on Friday night. It's at 8 p.m. British Standard Time, as you can see on the screen. It is Arsenal, the champions, who are looking to go back-to-back. First time going back-to-back since, Man City a couple of seasons ago. But Arsenal, they enter the season as the team that I think is the favorites to win the Premier League this season. Last season, I mentioned that they were the favorites to win the Premier League, and that was purely because of the same reason I'm going to mention this year. They had the squad depth, they had continuity with their manager, and they had a squad that believed in the style of play. Now, I say that because Arteta's style of football is not necessarily everyone's cup of tea. I know certainly for myself, it's not the way I want my football team that I'm supporting to play, right? It's a bit of a handbrake that he puts on the attacking talent, and I prefer my attacking or my team to play a bit more, fluid attacking football, more aggressive attacking football, more risk-taking attacking football. And again, it's no knock on them. It's no knock on him. You can win the Premier League in a multitude of ways. You can play football in a multitude of ways. The funniest and probably most ironic thing is, on Football Manager, the most success I ever have is when I do play a type of system that Arteta does play, where it is looking to restrict the amount of time that the ball is in play, making sure that we're the best team at set pieces, having center backs playing as fullbacks, making sure that we've got defensive cover in midfield, and just relying on the fact that my attacking players only need 1 or 2 chances. They don't need, 10, 15 chances in order to get goals. We're going to drag you into the deep waters. We're going to bet on the fact that you can't swim with us in those deep waters, and we're going to drown you. And that's kind of what Arsenal does. That's what they did last season. As I mentioned, they've got the squad depth, so they can go the length of a season. I was talking to someone earlier today, and we were discussing squad depth, and I was saying, and they were quite adamant that their team that they support, gets into the Premier League starting 11. If you were to make an ultimate starting 11 for this season, they get into the team. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, that's not what a league season is about. A league season is about not just your starting 11, but who are the people coming off the bench? Who are the people that can come in when players in your starting 11 get injured? And Arsenal have so much depth. when it comes to that. And you can see they're intentional about it. Because look at, they've got an injury to Saliba. They're going to go and get a Kwanzaa. Saliba's going to be back anytime soon. So how are they going to manage all of these personalities, all of these big names? That's what you pay the manager for, right? That's why he gets paid the big bucks. And last season, he managed it quite well. There wasn't any talk of dressing room unrest. There wasn't any whispers of players being upset about their minutes, except for maybe, a young player like Miles Lewis Skelly, where these type of players who are academy players and they are wanting to increase their minutes and be involved in what Arsenal are doing. Sometimes they can be a bit impatient, and maybe as a manager, you got to manage that, right? You look at Nwaneri as well, Ethan Nwaneri. He's someone that strikes me as a player that is eager to play more minutes, a player that was probably promised more minutes when he signed his contract. But Arsenal are operating like a club that knows this is their window to win right now. And there's some of these young academy players that are going to fall, along the wayside, unfortunately for them. But it's for the greater good if you are Arsenal to maximize getting as many first team plug and play players into the squad as possible, whether they're starters or they're coming off the bench or whatever the case may be. And we're seeing that again this season. I don't think there is a squad in the Premier League as presently constructed that can match Arsenal's squad depth. And that's going to tell for the rest of the season if the rest of the Premier League doesn't address that over the couple of days left in the transfer window. I just don't see who could potentially be that club that could produce a squad deeper than Arsenal's. We know Man City still have business to do. We know Liverpool still has business to do. Those are arguably the two closest teams in terms of squad depth potential, if they can add a couple of players. But I don't see either of them doing the business that I think they require in order to be able to match Arsenal from that perspective. So from my perspective, as I thought last season, it's Arsenal's to lose. But that's the beauty about the Premier League. It doesn't care about who's meant to win the Premier League or who has the deepest squad. You have to actually go and do it. And credit to Arsenal last season, they did go and do it. They obviously are the defending champions, which is why we spent quite a bit of time on them right now. I think it's only fair to pay them that respect and fully dive into who they are and why I think they are the team that is going to go and win the Premier League this season. And I'm not going to give the rest of my predictions in terms of top four and relegations and all of that stuff. Not yet. I'm one of those odd people that wait until the transfer window actually closes before I officially give my predictions. I get it. You want to give your predictions before the season starts. I appreciate that. For me, that's just reckless speculation because so much can happen at the end of a transfer window that could change how a team goes into the season, right? So for me personally, I prefer to wait until after the transfer window closes. Then I can assess every single squad and then give you guys my predictions, which I'll then do on the show after the transfer window ends. But Coventry are one of those teams that do still need a couple more pieces. I think they're one of those stories that a lot of people are going to have a soft spot for. They're a club who were a Premier League mainstay, I think 25 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It's their first time in 25 years that they're going to be in the Premier League. And Frank Lampard built an attack in the Championship that scored 97 goals. They scored 29 of those goals from set pieces, which I think is very important considering, yes, I know the new rules are coming in terms of what you can and cannot do with set pieces. And I still think there are questions on whether or not referees can be consistent over an entire season in the Premier League. We've seen rules come in, and within 3 months, those rules are no longer being either enforced as harshly as they were at the beginning of the season, or even being enforced at all. So, okay, the new rules are coming in, cool. I'll wait to see if they actually enforce them. So you do need to have that set piece pedigree. And I do think them scoring 97 goals shows they've got the attacking flair and attacking approach. Whether or not that can work in the Premier League is then the question that they're going to need to answer. But I do love the fact that they got 29 set piece goals, because that's something I think that can translate to the Premier League. And it's something they're going to need to rely on. Any team is going to need to rely on if they want to stay in the Premier League, especially if goals come hard to find by in open play. And you look at the fact that they're quite a aggressive team. I think they led the league in headers in the Championship as well. But this is where then the reality comes in, is how much of what they did in the Championship can they translate to the Premier League. And I think with some of their transfer business, they've identified that. I think they're going to be, or they're going to have to, we'll see whether or not they do end up doing this. They're going to have to be, obviously, a little more conservative than the type of play that got them into the Premier League, which is always a bit of an awkward thing. You come in high-flying, attacking football, and you kind of almost have to respect the teams that you're going up against in the league higher up. And whether or not they're going to be able to achieve that, time will tell. Lampard, hopefully, has learned a lot from his previous experiences in the Premier League. He's been, in a team that has aspirations for challenging for Premier League titles as a manager. And he's been at a team that has high aspirations, but were, fighting relegation battle as a manager. So he's got that kind of experience that he can pull from, and hopefully for their sake, he's going to be able to help the team. Obviously, they've brought some players in that also have that experience, but you want your leader in the manager to also have that experience. I think it's an unfortunate start to the season for them because, as I said, the champions, they're going to be bullish about their chances of going back-to-back this season. I can see Arsenal really wanting to put, their flag planted right at the top of the Premier League and make that statement victory to say, look, we are the champions last season for a reason, and you're going to have to beat us. You're going to have to take us. You're going to have to rip that trophy out of our hands effectively if you want to win this title. I'm going to go with a 3-0 Arsenal win. We know their defense is formidable. They had, the best defense last season. They increased their defensive resolve. I think from an XG perspective, they allowed 37 goals less than Man City and 74 better than 74 less than Fulham. That's just kind of to give you guys an idea of how Arsenal's metrics from a defensive perspective are compared to other teams over the last 3 seasons. That is, the XG allowed is 37 better than Man City and 74 better than Fulham. That's not a gap, that's a canyon, right? That's absolutely massive. And I can see that in them continuing that this season. I don't think the handbrake is going to be released for them this season. I think they've got a trusted way to play. The players believe in it. The players believe in the manager, and they've got the squad that has the depth, especially defensively, to be resolute, to go and, win games and grind out victories. And yes, I've spoken about how the handbrake is on and all of this stuff, and yet predicted a 3-0. How does that work? Well, it's quite simple. Arsenal pride themselves on getting that first goal, being the first team to score, because then they can, play counter-attack football, rely on that solid defense. And that's where I think the more Coventry start to chase the game, they're going to be exposed defensively, and Arsenal are then going to go and score a couple more goals. But for Coventry, these are not the games necessarily you need to either get too high on if you win or too low on when you lose. there are other games that you will be circling in your calendar that you need to win in order to stay in the Premier League. Arsenal away on opening day is a bonus. The best you can hope for is the fact that it's just straight after preseason, so they might not be as fit. Obviously, you're not as fit, and maybe you could get something out of that. But I think for them, try and keep the score respectable, and then you go and chase your victories in other games. But I do wish them well. I hope they're able to be competitive in the Premier League. Let's move on to our next game. It is Hull versus Manchester United, and it's Man United playing away. I think this is an interesting game because when you look at the fixtures when they first come out, and Sky Sports and BT have to then almost bid for which fixtures they're going to have. The first bid that can go is the Sunday after late kickoff, right? So this weekend it's the Newcastle Liverpool game. So Sky clearly picked that one. That was almost, if you're having a draft for those American football fans in the chat and listening to this podcast. I know drafts are coming on through, they've been going on for the month of August, and a lot are going to be coming in quicker over the next couple of weeks. I know I've got my draft, I think on the 5th of September, which I'm looking forward to. But anyway, Sky get to pick a game, then BT pick a game, then Sky pick a game, then BT pick a game, and Sky pick, and it kind of goes like that, right? And the formula for the 12:30 kickoff game, because it's the second game that gets picked, is you want ideally a top 6 team, traditionally top 6 team, right? That is playing away from home, because that then triggers that potential banana skin and it draws more viewers in. We all know what has now become quite a common phrase, Schadenfreude, which is a German word from, the words derived from Schaden and Freude, which is damage and joy, and is taking pleasure in the misfortune of others. And they actually have done brain studies about this, and the brain actually releases chemicals when this happens that brings you pleasure or brings you joy. And we can see it with fan content and watch-alongs, watching your rivals lose a game, how exhilarating that can be, right? Pause. Right. So that's kind of the thinking with how BT usually picks that 12:30 game. So again, you're looking at the fixtures that we've got this weekend. Obviously, as I scroll through them, in terms of teams that are playing away, Brentford, Tottenham is maybe one that they could have picked, because we can see Sky pick that one next, because the next game is that Sky's next game would be the one they put at 5:30. Well, yeah, 5:30 on the Saturday, right? I'm not seeing any other games. Obviously, Newcastle, Liverpool, Sky would have taken that first, so that would have been out of the way. Maybe they could have gone with Fulham, Chelsea, Chelsea away at Fulham. But I do think opening weekend, Man United going away to a promoted side in Hull, I think is a great choice. And you can see why they've picked it. Either is that banana skin effect. As we mentioned, all the teams are coming into this a bit, not up to full speed. So there's always that chance that Man United don't have the fitness to see out the game. So there might be only 1-0 up, and they can't be aggressive enough to chase that second, which obviously makes the game exciting towards the end when Hull think, hang on, we've got a chance in this. So you can see how the dynamics work and how they go about picking which games they pick, whether it's a BT or Sky Sports or whoever the broadcasters are. But anyway, in terms of the specific game itself, I mean, Hull are one of those teams that came up with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They weren't expected to be a team that got promoted. We all know the circumstances that led to them being promoted as well. Some might argue, with what happened with Southampton, if that doesn't happen, are Hull even in the Premier League? But one thing they've been is a team, to borrow a phrase from Jurgen Klopp, they've been a team that has turned doubters into believers the whole of last season. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do something like that this season. The manager is quite pragmatic, but he has an owner that is the complete opposite of that. And I think they mesh quite well. I'm curious to see how Hull are able to get up to speed with the Premier League and the pace of the Premier League. And Man United is a great test of that, because this is a team coming into this, hopefully, with confidence, considering what they did last season. A manager who was an interim manager, he's now been given the job full time. You look at, there was the league table that was doing the rounds where, since Michael Carrick has been in charge at Man United have had the most points in the league, right? So you'd imagine they're coming into this game with a lot of confidence. But there's still questions about Man United. I still think, obviously, there's still the talks of, Belieber and whether or not they can get that one over the line, medical and all of that good stuff. Just on that, even though he's injured, he can still pass a medical. What they might do from a contractual perspective is maybe add in some more insurance clauses with regards to him, if there's any kind of doubt or uncertainty with regards to the injury. But by all accounts, he's doing really well with the recovery. It's not expected to be a long-term injury or a serious injury or one that affects him long-term. So yeah, you might add a few clauses from an insurance perspective, but other than that, he'll be able to pass the medical. So that's not a concern for them. But I still think until they bring him in and until he is playing for them, if he does end up being the person that they bring in, their midfield still lacks that balance in it. And again, everyone plays everyone in the Premier League twice, but it depends when you play each team, which is crucial. And Hull playing Man United at this point in time is a great time for them to be playing them. And as a Liverpool fan, obviously, Schadenfreude kicks in, right? And you're thinking, can Hull get something from this game? I'm going to go with a 2-1 Man United win. I don't want to go too aggressive because I still think Man United have some things to work out. As I mentioned, the balance in midfield, I think the balance on the left-hand side of the pitch as well needs to be addressed. And I'm pretty sure Hull are going to be quite resolute in their defending. I think they're going to be quite stubborn to break down. And I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way. I just think their manager is quite tactically astute from that perspective, making them difficult to beat. And you will see when they start going forward, attacking wise, they try and get the ball into the box really, really quickly. Usually in preseason, I've noticed that a lot of their play has been flowing through their left-hand side. Time will tell if that continues into the season. So definitely check for that. If it does happen, do come back on the chat on Monday, because we obviously gonna have our show on Monday at 10 o'clock as we always do now that we're on YouTube. So yeah, that's gonna be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think Man United 2-1 win is fair for that one. I want to move on to our next game, which is Everton versus Crystal Palace. Obviously, from an Everton perspective, from a Liverpool City perspective, just to give some of you guys that aren't new listeners to this show, welcome. I do appreciate you joining us. I am one of those Liverpool fans that has no issues with Everton doing really well, or as well as they possibly can, as long as it's one position worse off than Liverpool. So if, let's say, the FA Cup were to happen, I would happily play Everton in the FA Cup final as long as we beat them. If Liverpool win the league title, I hope Everton finish second. I have no ill will to them from that perspective. It's almost like a little brother, right? You don't hate, you love them, right? In that sense, but they're the little brother. They should know their place, so to speak. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's kind of how I see them, where, they might swing, and you can just keep them at arm's length or something like that. So for me, I I've always paid attention to Everton, what they're doing, and maybe from a different perspective to what other Liverpool fans see them as. And it's obviously some, that opinion or that hot take is one I sometimes get in trouble with Liverpool fans because they want Everton to get relegated and all these kind of things. Well, some of them or the majority of them that I see, right? I think Everton look like a team that could challenge for European football next season. I love what they've done in midfield. I think they've got serious depth in midfield. You look at the likes of Hackney coming in to bolster that midfield. You've already got a Dewsbury Hall in there that was playing really well. I like, the Norgard signing because I think he creates a base for the rest of that midfield to play as well. And you've obviously got those exciting players like the Diaz that can spark something. Defensively, they're usually quite a good defensive team. They've obviously got England's number one at the back. Right. Full confession here. I'm not Jordan Pickford's biggest fan. I think positionally he's quite weak and he pulls off a lot of TV dives because his positioning is so poor. And if it was better, he wouldn't need to be saving the ball in the way that he does at times. And it usually then gets him in trouble. But it's not to say he's not a good keeper. I just don't think he is as good as he thinks he is, or as good as some people rate him to be. But still, defensively, they're quite resolute. So you've got that resolute defense. You've now got a midfield that has depth. And you're looking at potentially, wide players that are exciting to watch. I'm just trying to look up Everton's squad quite quickly here because here we go. So in midfield, we've got obviously Hayden Hackney that's come in. We've got Roll that's come in as well. James Garner's still there. Obviously, he's injured. And I think, there are players in there that they can mix and match. Tarek George is going to be part of that midfield, but obviously from a wider starting point. I think, bringing in a Brendan Johnson, we'll see whether or not he can revive his career because it's been a bit of a stop-start for them. The issue for Everton for me, right, is goals. Because last season, go look at how Beto was playing from a movement perspective. He was doing everything you want your striker to be doing, in my opinion. His movement was so good last season, and he would get to certain positions and the ball wouldn't arrive. And you'd see the confusion in his face. And it looked like a player that's saying, we practiced this. Or why is the ball not arriving at the same time that I'm arriving? And I was baffled by the fact that it kept happening game after game after game. They need to get on page with him. I don't know what's gone on there from an attacking perspective, but there's serious miscommunication with regards to the runs he's making, which I think, objectively speaking, have been good runs, and the ball's just not getting to him, in those moments. So if they can supply him, I think he can get enough goals to make them, competitive in the top half of the Premier League. But the others need to come along with him. Tiano Barry, who is a player that a lot of people have a soft spot for because he tries hard and you almost want to will the ball into the back of the net for him. He has to start delivering. We've mentioned an Iliman Njai and how lively he can be. Then you've got the likes of Tyler Dibbling, who obviously is still young, but can he chip in with a couple of goals? Brendan Johnson needs to revive his career. So if these guys can start bringing in some goals, maybe, you got your set piece goals coming in from a Branthwaite, Tarkowski, and Keane at the back. This is what Everton need in order to elevate into those Champions League positions. But in terms of a base, from a defensive perspective, from a aggressive perspective, I'm going to call Everton the team replacing what Newcastle were, which is a team that no one wants to play, a team that is aggressive in midfield, is going to try and bully you in midfield, and is going to cause a lot of problems for teams this season. I'm telling you, Everton's going to be a problem for a lot of teams this season. I'm optimistic for Everton. As I said, as long as they finish one position below Liverpool, but coming up against a Crystal Palace side who, to me, obviously PSG coming in, he's going to continue that 3-4-2-1 system and structure that's been in there, which I think is a bonus. He's going to add a bit more possession than maybe what they had under Glasner, and their build-up play is going to be a bit more intentional than what they had under Glasner. Because of that, I think that's what makes Adam Wharton staying really important, because he is phenomenal for as a deep lying playmaker. And look, money talks in the Premier League, right? If a team comes in for Wharton and he has to go, I think Crystal Palace could be in real trouble because of the system that is coming in and how much it relies on a player like Adam Wharton to be able to facilitate for Crystal Palace to build up the pitch. We will see whether or not they're able to keep him. By all accounts, they want to keep him. And we've seen, for example, with the Mark Gay situation last season, if they want to keep a player, they are able to keep a player. There's a player that was sitting in Liverpool's offices in London. So Liverpool have offices in London as well as in Liverpool. And he was literally sitting on transfer deadline day in the Liverpool offices, getting ready to travel to Liverpool with, some delegates from Liverpool. And then the deal doesn't happen, right? So if they want to keep him, there's precedent there that they're going to be able to keep him. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Can the depth of Everton's midfield be able to stop that build-up play from the back for Crystal Palace? And obviously from a Crystal Palace perspective, can a Mateta still be, from a long-term perspective, right? Can a Mateta still be impressive? Glasner, we've seen, has been a revelation for him when he came in. Can he still be effective? You're looking at a Jorgen Strand Larsen. Can he be? There are a lot of can he be effectives? Can he still be consistent? Can he produce what he did last season? When I'm looking at this Crystal Palace team, and obviously I think it's going to be fantastic for them to have Cheick Doucouré back. Just a side note, shout out to him. I really hope he can just get a full season under his belt without any injuries. So I'm wishing him well. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on how he does this season. In terms of predictions, I'm going to go with the 2-1 Everton win. I think Everton, I've bigged them up. I have to back them, which kind of spoils the Liverpool result later on, because Liverpool have to win that game. Otherwise, Everton will be ahead of Liverpool in the league table, and that's never fun from my perspective. Right. Let's move on to the next game. It is Ipswich versus Sunderland. From an Ipswich perspective, fascinating team, right? I mean, you lose Kieran McKenna and you're thinking, where do we turn to from here? How do we approach this promotion different to how it went last time, when maybe they weren't as effective as they wanted to be? Well, in comes Gary O'Neill. And what we've seen from Gary O'Neill is he knows how to navigate the Premier League. He's not the most flashy manager. I appreciate that. But there's something about him in terms of know-how. We saw what he did with Bournemouth. I think he can do something similar with this Ipswich side. Whether or not they can adapt to his style of play as quickly as they need to, time will tell. Again, another team who I like what they've done in midfield. They've brought in Sasa Lukic. They've brought in Floriento Luis. And I think it's just added a lot of protection for that defensive line, which, again, you want to build from the back going forward. You want to have stability at the back so you can play. And if they can get that stability at the back, they've brought in some really exciting wide players. You've got a Clark there, you've got a Philligan there, you've got a Fatau there. Maeda's come in as well. These are all players who are chasing consistency, but could be exciting. And we'll see whether or not they can be exciting this season. I think it's inconsistent wide players, but hopefully their purple patches can mix and match in a way that Ipswich are never really missing something from out wide, because that's where I think their bread and butter is going to come from a point scoring perspective, so to speak. If they're going to collect points this season, it's going to be from excellent wide play, launching off the base of that really strong foundation in central midfield and the defenders behind them, right? I still think their fullbacks need an upgrade, but I don't know whether or not they're going to be able to do that. Sunderland. I am worried about Sunderland this season. They obviously have European football. They were the Europa League overachievers, so to speak, last season in terms of getting into that position, from their Premier League performance. And you have to wonder, obviously, with the financial restrictions that are in place in the Premier League, they were aggressive heading into last season. And we saw all the promoted teams were relatively aggressive coming into Premier League last season. So did they kind of empty their clip last season and can't really do too much this season? Because they haven't really done too much this season. And yet you're thinking, well, we've got that, kind of additional money from getting into Europe. Can we do something with it? Seems like the big thing for them was keeping Granit Xhaka, and then we go again this season. Now, the concern I have with that is, first and foremost, there are a lot of players in that team that are not used to playing European football and Premier League football. And you take into account how difficult players say that Thursday, Sunday turnaround is. I'm worried. I am worried. The lack of experience of their play of a lot of their players in being able to do that, let alone it being the Thursday, Sunday, the dreaded Thursday, Sunday, is a concern for me. The fact that they haven't brought in more experienced players in that perspective that have that European pedigree, whether it is from a Europa experience or from a Champions League experience, whatever the case may be, they haven't really done that. Yes, they've got players, in there that can help out. A Granit Xhaka being the prime example, right? Because we've already spoken about him. But I'm seeing them, they're a regression candidate for me. I thought they overperformed last season. You look at their goal difference last season, they were the only top half team, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure producer Ben Pescott will mention to me if I'm not correct here, but they were the only top half team that didn't have a positive goal difference last season. You look at how well they started last season. Could a lot of that have been because teams weren't really familiar with them, weren't really familiar with their manager coming in and how they were going to approach things? That element of surprise, did they catch some teams out? Then they lost a lot of players during AFCON, and kind of just before AFCON and through AFCON, obviously that's tough for them. And straight after AFCON, they struggled quite a bit. Then they started to pick up again towards the end of the season. They go on and make European football. So for me, I'm very, very worried for Sunderland. As I said, I think this is a situation kind of like we saw, was it Sheffield United, who soared one season and then dropped the next season? I would not be surprised if Sunderland end as a bottom half team. I wouldn't be surprised at some point in time this season they are in the relegation zone. I don't think after one game, if they are in the relegation zone, I'm going to claim that my take was correct. But later on the season, we'll see. It's something to track. You guys keep an eye out for that. You guys keep me honest. So keep a track of that. Come back to me in the season if it does happen. Remind me. If it doesn't happen, just completely forget it, right? Don't even mention it. Don't even mention it. In terms of how this game is going to go, I think it's an exciting game. I think it won't answer all the questions, but it will certainly answer some of the questions with regards to what I'm talking about with Sunderland in terms of that second year slip that could potentially happen with them. And then from an Ipswich perspective, I'm curious to see how they handle Gary O'Neill's first game in the Premier League, right, for them. Obviously, he's got experience with previous clubs, and that's why they've brought him in. Scorelines, I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw. I think that makes for an exciting game. I think, yeah, I was leaning 1-1, but I've talked myself into a 2-2 draw somehow. So let's stick with that. Let's go with a 2-2 draw for that one. Let's move on to our next game, which is Nottingham Forest versus Leeds. But before we get to that, I do want to just thank you guys so much again for joining us on this podcast and engaging with us so much. We do appreciate it. A reminder again to turn on the bell to make sure that you never miss a show. Hit the like button, drop some comments in here. Let me know what your score predictions are, whether it's obviously in the live chat. If you're in the live chat, give me your score predictions for these games. If you are watching this video later on, definitely give me your score predictions in the comments section. I do love hearing from you guys and engaging with you guys. And don't forget as well that Amazon prize that we do have heading into the end of April. Sorry. Oof, if it was the end of May, end of April, sorry, where you can win a £20 Amazon gift voucher. So let's move on to our next game, Nottingham Forest versus Leeds. So from a Nottingham Forest perspective, obviously Glasner comes in. A bit of a surprise that that's where he ended up, especially with an owner that's got such a very, very hot trigger hand in terms of firing managers. And I wonder if Glasner's aggressive approach, his no-nonsense demands, rubbed some teams the wrong way, maybe in this off-season or leading up to this off-season, and he's ended up at Nottingham Forest. I don't think it's a bad situation to end up in. If anything, I think it's a great pairing. I just thought he was going to end up at, no disrespect to Nottingham Forest, I know they're English football traditional royalty. I just thought he was going to end up somewhere else, maybe the AC Milan job or something like that. If he was leaving the situation he's leaving at Crystal Palace with what he had done there, I thought maybe he had a very tasty job lined up. And again, this could be a tasty job with Nottingham Forest. I think the squad fits his style of football really well. I think he could play either 4 at the back or he could play 3 at the back and it could work out well. 3 at the back for them defensively looks quite strong. Now that they've brought Diomande in, obviously they've got Morello there and Milenkovic as well. I think that could be fascinating to watch. Obviously, they hope and Aina can, it's 1 year more removed from the injury. Can he be a talisman as a wing back there? Then you've got Nico Williams, former Liverpool Academy player, on the other side of the flank as well. I just think the signing as well of Sangare is going to be a revelation for them. He was last season, I thought, and this season I think he's just going to continue to progress. And then you've got the likes of Gibbs White. I think if they play 3 at the back, it's going to open up space for Gibbs White to kind of play in those half spaces, supporting the attack, and that's when he's at his best. Up front, I thought, I think they've got a really strong squad. As I said, I think it suits Glasner's style of play quite well. Leeds are interesting to me because you look at the way they ended last season. They were a freight train. They were a team nobody wanted to play towards the end of last season because they had this momentum. They did well to keep faith in their manager, which I thought was really important, and they end up getting rewarded for it, right? We've seen teams fire managers left, right, and centers. When they weren't doing so well, they kept faith in Daniel Falk, and he ends up getting them, to safety. And I think they're heading into the season with a lot of confidence. I think, on the optimism table that was doing the rounds on social media, they were either at the top of it or very near the top of it. And I'm not surprised. They've had a really strong preseason. Calvert-Lewin looks fit, ready, and firing for the season. And when you've got a player who is in goal-scoring form, who has that confidence as a striker, it just makes everyone else feel confident. It makes everyone else puff their chest out a little bit more and be willing to, you know, go into a 50-50 challenge more, because there is that belief in and around the squad. So I think they're an exciting team. I think this is a great test for Nottingham Forest and who they are to be this season, to play Leeds so early on, and a Leeds side that looks to have the bit between their teeth so early on in the season. I think Leeds could be off to a flyer potentially. I'm going to go with the 1-1 draw, a 2-2 draw in this one. Sorry, 2-2 draw. That means it's back-to-back 2-2 draws, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I'm going to go with the 2-2 draw in this one. And another game that I'm low-key looking forward to. The games that I'm looking forward to keep rolling on, because Brentford versus Tottenham, Brentford have been my team of the preseason, man. They've been so aggressive from an attacking perspective. I just love how they're such a system team, and they back that to the hill. And that goes from off the pitch to on the pitch. That goes from the way they do transfers to the way they approach the manager that they're bringing in, that they didn't go outside of the bubble. They promoted from within. And they are definitely one of those teams that is the sum of its parts are greater than the individual parts themselves. And the question for them, I guess, is can they keep Thiago scoring at the rate he did last season? If they can, then if they can, yeah, predictions week is coming soon. If they can, look out for what prediction that I give for them there. I'm still deciding whether or not I think they can keep him going. But Mamadou Sangara, I wanted him at Liverpool. I can't lie. I really did. I think he's a brilliant ball-winning midfielder. I think the quality is going to show. I'm not going to be surprised if by the end of this season, there are teams higher up in the league table, maybe a higher profile club, no disrespect to Brentford, are going to be coming in for him, and Brentford are going to easily be able to double the money that they paid for him this offseason. It's a phenomenal signing. It's a clever signing. And for him, it's a clever move. As much as I wanted him at Liverpool, I think Brentford, where he gets to start week in, week out, play in a system team like they do have, I think it's going to do wonders for his profile and his development. And yeah, selfishly, I wanted him at Liverpool. But when I look at him and I'm thinking of his career, I think this is a phenomenal move for him. Then on the other side of things, you've got Tottenham, who have just emptied their club, right? From a financial perspective, and it looks like they're not done yet. They're trying to address their forward line and finalize that now. They've done their defense, they've done the midfield. Now it's about the forward line and getting in the players that they want to get in. We'll see whether or not they can get all the players that they want to get in. I think this is a pivotal season for Tottenham. We obviously know how they did last season. I mean, it's in the podcast intro, right? It's in our podcast intro. Tottenham survive. Yeah, they need to address that. But it looks like they're going into the season again very optimistic. I like what they've done. I still think defensively they're not as good as they need to be. But if they can almost bring in all the attackers they want to bring in, and they come in and play with that chip on the shoulder of, well, we were at a bigger club, no disrespect to Tottenham. We were at bigger clubs that were challenging for titles. We've now gone to Tottenham. We want to prove those clubs that they were wrong for letting us go. If those players, a Marmoush, a Savinho, a Gakpo, if they come in with that type of attitude, then Tottenham are going to be flying. Then they can carry that weak-ass defense to a Champions League spot. But if those players come in and they think, woe is me, I was at a club that's challenging for titles, now I'm in a club where maybe I can coast some weeks and whatever, then Tottenham are in trouble. They're going to be fighting for Europa League at best. I think motivation is going to be a key thing. De Zerbi, that's why we pay you the big bucks. We'll see whether or not he's going to be able to motivate them. I think in terms of games, this to me is, outside the Newcastle Liverpool game, this is a game I'm looking forward to because I've been so infatuated with Brentford this offseason. And I think Tottenham have done a lot and expectation is high. And I always find, I don't know if it's all clubs or if, I don't know if I'm picking on Tottenham in this sense, but Tottenham, from a fan's perspective, and I'm generalizing here and I do apologize, it's either we're going to win the league or we're going to get relegated. There's no middle ground for them. And it seems like everyone's moved to the we're going to win the league camp. I think those aspirations are a bit too high and they might get disappointed because of that. So be cautious. But anyway, it's the beginning of the season. Everyone's got 0 points. Everyone can go and mathematically win the league, at this point in time. So I'm not going to police how to be a fan. I'm not dissuading you from believing that your team can go and win the league title. I'm just being objective. And I'm calling it as I see it, right? So in that game, I'm torn in this one. I think Tottenham might not have done all the business they want to do from an attacking perspective, playing a system team that's a year ahead of them in terms of development from a system perspective, with their manager having been there slightly longer. I'm going to give Tottenham the loss in this one. And I'm curious to see how they will react to it. I'm going to go with Brentford 2-1 in this game. I'm going to back Thiago to continue that goal scoring score. I have been loving the way they played in preseason. Right. Let's move on to Brighton versus Aston Villa. It is obviously the game that kicks off at 2:00 on Sunday. And Brighton have been, a team that's been forced to make quite a lot of turnover from last season. You look at the players that they've lost a while back, for example, that's gone. You thought you lost Baliba and Minter to injury. You could potentially lose them to transfers. That could be interesting heading into the season. But they've brought in some interesting players. I think Vuskovic is a super talented centre back, and I don't know why Tottenham made that trade, so to speak. Van Hecker going that way, Vuskovic going the other way. I'd rather have Vuskovic personally, but maybe he just was disgruntled at Tottenham. And then you've brought experience in Struijk to come and play next to him and kind of coach him at times, which I think is a smart thing to do. I think this game might come slightly too early in the season for Brighton because they're playing an Aston Villa side who overall, I think Aston Villa might be like Sunderland in trouble this season. But for this specific game, I think it comes at a perfect time for them. I think they go and win this game 2-0. I think Aston Villa are, well, the Kwanzaa thing is a big one, right? Losing him. But I think Aston Villa are a team that will be settled coming into this game, but are going to struggle later on in the season. And the frustrations for them obviously are from a financial perspective, with regards to the fans, from a transfer perspective, what they think they should be able to do versus what they're able to do. All I would say is it depends on when you spend your money. And you have a team like a Newcastle that spent their money really early and now having to go to a transition phase. Aston Villa, I think, are kind of in that same boat. They were very aggressive a couple of seasons ago, and they've been paying for it for a couple of seasons now. Prediction. Yeah, as I said, 2-0, right? I'm not sure about that. Chat, let me know what you think about that. Or if you are commenting, do comment your score on that. That game I'm still a bit unsure about in terms of score predictions. The next game that we're going to be discussing is Manchester City versus Bournemouth. And for Man City, obviously, it's a huge shakeup. You lose Pep Guardiola, you lose a Rodri, you lose a Silva, you lose a Stones, you lose a Ake, you lose a Akanji. Trafford goes as well. No disrespect to him, but obviously he wasn't the first choice goalkeeper. But this is a lot of your core of that Pep Guardiola squad, and you're losing Pep himself. So that's not just a transition, that's a full-on rebuild. And they still have talented players. I mean, Erling Haaland is odds-on favorite for the Golden Boot this year, right? You've still got Donnarumma in goal, who is a phenomenal goalkeeper. And then you've got those, you sprinkled in the likes of the Cherokee, the Semenyos, the Dokus, Foden. I'm expecting big things from Foden this season. I think he is in danger of, or he's actually not in danger. I mean, he's English. He's a fan favorite of a lot of the mainstream media pundits. But at what point is Foden going to elevate to one of the best players in the Premier League? He's one of those players who, because of his potential, we've always lumped him into that conversation. But in terms of his actual output, he's never been in that conversation. He just never has. I'm sorry. You look at the times when he's winning awards and you're thinking there are players that are giving a lot better output than you are, and yet you're winning awards because people like you, not because of your performances on the pitch, in my perspective, and the output that you're giving. Yes, from a potential perspective, and I think a lot of voters have voted for him in the past 4 awards because of the potential he has, opposed to what he's actually doing right now. At what point does Foden become a player that is a key cog in a team? And if it's not going to be at Man City, does he have to move to become that? Because the player that they told us he was going to become, I have to say I'm disappointed in Foden, because he's not reached anywhere near those levels from my perspective. He's constantly in and out of that Man City squad. And yes, time will tell whether or not he can get to that point, can get to that level. But I'm starting to wonder, when do we start being overcritical towards him? He's 26 years old now. He should be entering the prime years of his career. We're still treating him like he's a wonder kid. You're not a wonder kid at 26. And I'm not saying he's Jesse Lingard, because I do think he is a better player than Jesse Lingard, but he's getting to Jesse Lingard territory, where despite how old Jesse Lingard was getting, we're still considering him a young player. You're not a young player anymore, kid. And I just called him kid. How ironic. You're not a young player anymore. He has to step up. For me, with all the players that have left this season, I'm expecting Phil Foden to step up and be a key cog in this Man City team. I hope he can do it, but I'll wait for him to do it before I crown him for anything, because there are plenty of people that are ready to crown him for things he hasn't done yet, and I'm having none of it. Absolutely none of it. Sorry, Phil Foden. As I say, whenever I criticize a player, it's about what you're doing on the pitch. I don't know Phil Foden. I've met him once, but I don't know him. So it has nothing to do with him from a personal perspective. It has to do with what he's doing on the pitch. And that goes for any player that I praise or criticize, unless I do disclose to you that, I have a relationship, a friendship or whatever the case may be with this player. But, I call it like I see it from that perspective. Right. So a lot of questions for City with the rebuild that they're doing. Bournemouth come in, they kind of have a mini rebuild because they lost, obviously, Areola. He's gone to Liverpool. Marco Rose comes in, he takes over. And I think that the fact that they continue to be smart in the transfer window. Antonio Silva is a clever signing for me. Another one of those players who comes into the Premier League in a team slightly lower profile than I thought they would when they came to the Premier League, but it's going to help them because they're going to get more game time, they're going to get more experience and exposure. And obviously, them losing Senesi was a big thing, but I think this is a great replacement, someone to try and emulate what Senesi did and potentially go above that, right? They're a dangerous team. Obviously, some of the injuries to them are unfortunate, and considering how exciting they were to end last season, you would have wanted them to come into the season as healthy as possible, because then the sky's the limit for them, right? But I still think they're an exciting team. I think they will fancy going to the Etihad against the Man City side that might still be a bit unsure, that where there are rumors of the players haven't really adapted to this style of play and all of this kind of stuff. This is the type of game Bournemouth really liked last season, right? This is the type of game that Bournemouth want to cause an upset in. And as confident as I am in Man City from a overall perspective and how they're going to do in the league, for this specific game, I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with the Bournemouth win. I'm going to go with the Bournemouth 2-1 win to just maybe throw a spanner in the works with regard to Man City. I'm curious to see how they respond when that happens. But yeah, I think Bournemouth this is a great fixture for Bournemouth in this one. Right, let's move on to what is my game of the weekend. Obviously not biased, right, as a Liverpool fan, but Newcastle versus Liverpool, Sunday late kickoff. It's Newcastle-Liverpool has always been a spicy game. You can go all the way back, right, to the Kevin Keegan days, right? Stan Collymore. It's always going to be spicy. And this version of the Newcastle-Liverpool, in inverted commas, mini rivalry, because it's not a real rivalry in my opinion. They've got time where we've got Merseyside derby and all of that kind of stuff. This version of this mini derby has been fueled by transfer gate multiple times. Liverpool go get Hugo Ekitike. Newcastle wanted Hugo Ekitike. Liverpool unsettle Isak allegedly, right? That's what Newcastle players will be saying. I mean, fans will be saying. They end up getting Isak from them. Newcastle are about to sign Munoz. Liverpool step in and get him. They just keep annoying Newcastle every little bit. And if you're a Liverpool fan and you heading into this fixture prior to this transfer window, so if you were heading into this fixture at St. James's Park and Newcastle still had Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, and a fit Joe Linton, you would be worried heading into this game. It's never an easy game at St. James's Park for Liverpool. But they can breathe a little bit easier because that midfield trio is not going to be a factor in this game. And that's an unfortunate thing for Newcastle. And as I said, they're a team that has to rebuild. And hopefully they're able to sort that out. They're going to be building a new stadium, a new training ground, credit to them. I think all clubs that have aspirations need to have a world-class training center. And they're now training centers, right? Because you got all the different teams that train there as well within the club. Yeah, so I think Newcastle, it's going to be a tough season for them. I think you have to accept that. I would even say anything top half, you have to be okay with if you're Newcastle, which is a disappointing thing for Newcastle fans to hear, considering the aspirations that they had when the new owners came in, considering how well they did the season before, right? Getting into Champions League football, and being a team that's wanting to get in Champions League football consistently. This is a season where you try and get top 10 and you lick your wounds and you go again. I think this game comes at a wrong time for Newcastle. I mentioned, the Joe Linton injury. I think that's a big factor. Liverpool have always had issues with Newcastle because of Liverpool's midfield balance was poor with Arne Slot. It's still not great with Areola, and Liverpool are still refusing to sign a defensive midfielder. I don't know why. They've got too many players that like to play the 8 and no one that likes to play the 6. So that midfield balance is awful. But luckily for them, they're playing a Newcastle side whose midfield is being rejigged and reworked. So the midfield might not play a big factor in this game. And in games that midfield don't play a big factor, I think Liverpool are going to be favorites in most of those games. And that's why I think Liverpool can go and win at St. James's Park, despite how tough it is out there. I have to go with a Manic score because that's what happens at St. James's Park when Liverpool play them. I'm going to go with a 3-1 Liverpool win. I was going to go 3-2, but again, the fact that the midfield is not going to be such a big factor makes me go with a 3-1 instead of a 3-2. But again, a game that many people should be looking forward to. Right, let's move on then to our last game of the weekend. And it's a Monday kickoff, and it is Monday at 8 o'clock British Standard Time. Obviously, the game that is just before we do our Monday podcast. So straight after the game, 10 o'clock, come back here to EPL Index YouTube channel, and A Tad Predictable will be on, and we will discuss that game. We'll discuss the weekend action and any news that might have filtered through over, between now and then, whether it's transfers, big transfers, or something like that. God forbid, no major injuries. Hopefully, everyone gets through the weekend healthy. Right? Arbeloa. What do we think about Arbeloa at Fulham? Obviously, his stint at Real Madrid wasn't the greatest. I think he is one of those managers that comes into the Premier League with a lot of questions, comes to a team that is a settled Premier League team now. And I think Tony Khan might get twitchy if they start the season poorly, just because of how secure they've been in the Premier League and how quickly they could potentially be dragged into that relegation battle. And I mean, he comes in, he's got this very aggressive approach in terms of fullbacks overlap constantly. They're the ones that will be relied on to create overloads. I think with the intention, obviously, to try and feed Gonzalo Garcia, and he looks phenomenal, right? He looks like a very, very entertaining player. Whether or not he can sustain that over the course of a season, that's the question that needs to be answered. If he can, I think Fulham are going to be fine, despite whatever else is happening. If he can hit the ground running and continue in a consistent way, they're going to be fine this season. But yeah, it's going to be a spearhead attacking approach where everything's going to be funneled into Garcia and trying to get the best out of him and relying on him to get them as far away from the relegation battle as possible. And if they have aspirations, or if they're able to deliver anything more than that, I think that's a great season for Fulham this season, just because of the uncertainty we have with Arbeloa. But he does play a structured game. He likes his teams to play with a bit of width and be aggressive. And as I said, those fullbacks are going to be marathon runners this season. They better have gotten their preseason prep properly done this season, because they're going to be worked really, really hard. From a Chelsea perspective, I mentioned in our previous podcast that Alonso coming in is basically the grown-up coming into the room. It feels like with Chelsea, they look like a club that's been run by an immature football manager player, an immature, what was FIFA, I still call it FIFA, player. Alonso has, from the outside looking in, brought a bit more structure. You can see with the type of signings he's been making, they needed experience in that team. You can't rely on such a young team to go and challenge for a league title. If your expectations are that young team is going to grow together, and in a couple of years they'll challenge for the league title, then fine. Chelsea were kind of doing it the right way, not necessarily, but kind of, right? We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But if your aspirations are going for a league title, they needed more experienced players. They needed players that are going to bring consistency week in, week out, not have purple patches here and there throughout a season. So Alonso is going to bring that structure. He's going to bring an intention to how they approach things off and on the pitch. He was very demanding with what he expected if he was to join Chelsea. And the fact that he joined Chelsea, to me, means he got everything that he wanted. So he's got no excuses from that perspective. And I'm looking to see a more mature Chelsea on the pitch this season, a more intentional Chelsea, a more structured Chelsea. They're going to have very good pressing, and there's going to be clarity in their style of play. Morgan Rogers and Palmer could be exciting with João Pedro up top. I think João Pedro is an underrated player in the league. Yeah, it's going to be a strong team this season. We'll see whether or not the experienced players that they've brought in and around them can help keep that consistency going. In terms of score lines, I'm going to go with a 2-0 Chelsea win. I do think that Fulham could cause them a lot of problems, and I'm hesitant to not give Fulham a goal in this one, especially so early into the season. Defenses aren't necessarily up to speed. It's usually easier for attackers than defenders this early into the season, because the first thing to go when you're tired is this. Mentally, you start making silly errors, and that's why a lot of goals get scored early in the season. So we'll see whether or not, me not giving Fulham a goal goes against them, especially with how much I bigged up Garcia. People must be thinking, hang on, you just spoken about how they're spearheading everything to Garcia. That might be over the course of the season. I think for this game, unfortunately for them, they get the goose egg, right? And with that, obviously, that is the last game of the weekend. I mentioned we will be live straight after that game, but I think it sets a really nice stage in terms of a Premier League season. I think there's some really exciting games. We've done our predictions, but obviously those can only be shadows of what's to come. The Premier League deals more in truths, and the truth is going to arrive tonight, right? As soon as that whistle blows, all right, what have you got? Let's see what you've got. And you're going to ask questions. Each team's going to ask questions of the opponent, and we're going to start getting answers. Not necessarily all the answers, but we're going to start getting an idea of who everyone is. And you can't win the Premier League in August, but you can certainly lose it early on, August, September, October, right? So it will be pivotal for certain teams to get fast starts. If you are a team that's worried you're going to be in a relegation battle, you want to pick up points as quickly as possible just to give yourself that buffer and give you confidence. Because once momentum goes against you, it's really hard to turn that around. So it will be interesting to see how they all do there. And I wish all the teams, do I? Not really. I wish Liverpool all the best this season. Everyone else, yeah, as long as you finish below us, I couldn't care less where you finish, right? I think that's going to do it for another episode of A Tad Predictable. I do implore you to wrap up all your EPL fix at EPLindex.com for everything from match previews and post-match breakdowns to player ratings and the latest transfer buzz. Also check out It Was Always Football, which is the EPL Index Substack, for deeper tactical writing and long-form analysis. Tune in daily to the Two Footer podcast, where Dave Hendrick dissects the hottest topics in football. Then on Sunday evenings, catch the final whistle with Nina and Ben as they recap the weekend's action. We've also added some brand new shows to the EPL Index network, including Goal Difference with Lola and Scarlett, a modern Premier League show which brings sharp insight, strong opinions, and fresh voices to the network. My dad coined the phrase "making money make sense." He actually hosted a TV show with that name. And in terms of football terms, I would consider Mo Chatra is constantly making money make sense, right? He's got a show, a brilliant show called Money Talks. It was on our sister site, Anfield Index. He's bringing that across to the EPL Index so he can expand it from not just Liverpool finances, but league-wide financial discussion. So if you are one of those people interested in the finances behind these football clubs, definitely tune in to Money Talks. And finally, every weekday morning, wake up with Dave Davis on the News Round show to get caught up on everything you missed overnight regarding the English Premier League. Follow this show on Twitter and Blue Sky at A Tad Predictable, and keep up with at EPL Index for real-time updates. Make sure you subscribe to the EPL Index YouTube channel and hit the bell for notifications so you never miss a show. If you prefer the audio version, subscribe to the EPL Index podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating, drop a positive review. That stuff really does help us out, and we appreciate each and every one of you that has done it so far. I've been Tadiwa Chanakira. You can find me on my Twitter handle at TadPredicts, which is also my Blue Sky handle. A huge thank you to Obi Semenya. He's at John Empire SA, and Jody, she's at Spursy141 for our podcast intro and outro. And also a shout out to Greg Hopcroft. He put the video together as well, which I really appreciate. But the sound comes from Obi and Jody, and our producer behind the glass, Mr. Ben Pescott. He's at Ben Pescott _ on Twitter. And remember, Chisingaperi, Chinoshura.
Tottenham are safe. Spurs stay up. Oh, Reed! Where on earth did he find that one from?
Forward through for Krupi. Chance here.
Salah for Liverpool. And there finally is the goal.
Arsenal have won this game. Gabriel's header. In 2026, the champions are the Arsenal.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, EPL Index proudly brings to you the best prediction podcast in the world, A Tad Predictable. With your host, Tadiwa Chanakira.
For Liverpool.